You know, race could be a taboo topic. No one likes to talk about race. No one likes to address racial issues. No one likes to address the inadequacies or the issues that particular people have because they were born into particular families or born into generational poverty because of what took place in the past due to racism and slavery. No one wants to talk about prejudices in everyday systems that regular people have to interact with every day. People like to say racism is over. Racism doesn't exist anymore. It's 2024. No one's in chains anymore. No one's, forced to pick cotton anymore. Yet we have slave labor every single day right here in America. Racism is running quite rampant, been running rampant since slavery, and it don't seem to be getting better. As advocates push for policy changes in certain areas, life enhance, technology enhance, and the people that's been enforcing slavery get a little bit more strategic on how to keep people in slavery. I have this article here. This is Yahoo News. And you can look this up yourself. It's Black people are being falsely accused of serious crimes at alarming rates, reports find. Black people in the US are seven times more likely to be falsely convicted of a serious crime like murder to white people, according to the new report published Tuesday by the National Registry of Exonerations. The finding is based on an analysis of exonerations for serious crimes in the US over the last 4 decades, which found Black people make up less than 14% of the US population, but accounts for 53% of exonerations in the country. Again, people go to trial and sign plea deals all the time, not because they are guilty of a crime, but because they are attempting to take the most lenient sentence. And sometimes people actually stand for something instead of falling for anything and take it to trial, yet lose because they are Black, yet because they are poor, yet because they could not afford to pay for their innocence. The report focuses on how it's dangerous in a particular disturbing way that there's a possibility of being convicted of a crime that you didn't commit. Samuel Gross, the University of Michigan law professor and the lead author of the report titled Race and Wrongful Convictions in the United States 2022, told Yahoo News, the general conclusion is no surprise. Black people are much more likely to get the short end of the stick than whites. Data gathered from exonerations of murder, sexual assault, and drug crimes from 1989 through August of 2022 highlights, dates gathered from exonerations for murder, sexual assault, and drug crimes from 1989 through August of 2022 highlighted significant challenges in obtaining national criminal justice statistics, including clear answers on who reports and data to whom and how this data is de-estimated to react to trends. Most often, Gross said countries rather than the states are responsible for reporting crime, which results in misreporting and the lack of accountability because of the sheer volume. and that's the volume of inadequacies. Criminal justice statistics in the United States are not bad, Gross said. In addition to dramatic disparities across racial groups and false convictions, the report finds that innocent Black people also spend a significantly longer time in prison before exoneration than white people, with many spend an excess of 20, 30, or 40 years in prison for crimes they did not commit. Now, this talking about people in prison. This does not talk about people who've been fighting probation or parole because of an original charge that was false. National criminal justice statistics are not complete or accurate enough to permit synthetic comparisons of Latinos, Asian Americans, and indigenous people. Gross noted that the report does not tell just one story, but instead tells three separate stories altogether, paint a clear picture of the challenges of the criminal justice system. When the falsely convictions are drilled down into categories, a staggering 69% of drug conviction exonerees are Black. 69% of drug conviction exonerees are Black, compared to 16 who are white. That means that disparity study shows that Black and white people use drugs at similar rates. Innocent Black people are 19 times more likely to be convicted of drug crimes than innocent white people. And a lot of this, the report says, is up to the discretion of law enforcement. Who figures? Law enforcement was once a job of slave catchers, and they are still catching slaves right now in 2022. Slavery was not that long ago. Some people's parents was slave owners, and grandparents were slave owners, and these people are law enforcement officers, been law enforcement officers since they were catching slaves when people were still picking cotton. And now they still picking slaves to do slave labor for these big industries. Because drug crimes are almost never reported to police, the police choose to pursue for drug offenses. And they chose to stop, search, and arrest Black people several times more often than whites, the report says. That's racial profiling. One of its deplorable consequences is drug crime convictions of innocent Black defendants. In sexual assault cases, the report notes Black people are nearly 8 times more likely than white people to be falsely convicted of rape. I'm going to say that again. In sexual assault cases, the report notes Black people are nearly 8 times more likely than white people to be falsely convicted of rape, mainly because of a higher misidentification of Black suspects by white victims. But according to the report, these numbers appear to be on a decline since 2010. Only 2 rape convictions caused by mistaken witnesses' identifications have resulted in exonerations, thanks in large part to advanced technology, including DNA testing. Murder convictions that ultimately led to exonerations of Black defendants, however, were nearly 50% likely to include misconduct by police officers than murder exonerations of white defendants. The registry includes more than 250 innocent defendants, the majority of whom are Black, who had drugs deliberately planted on them by police officers, yet it's rare that police are held accountable. The report really shows a depth of the belief that race is a proxy for clinical and criminality and criminal legal system. Christina, executive director of the Innocence Project, a nonprofit committed to exonerating individuals who have been wrongfully convicted of crimes, told Yahoo News, it's hard to wrap your head around how much of a failure this is that we have jurisdictions that fail people this spectacularly and then refuse to acknowledge it when then refuse to sort of make it right. I'm gonna read that again. It's hard to wrap your head around how much of a failure this that we have jurisdictions that fail people this spectacularly and then refuse to acknowledge and refuse to make the problem right. The weight of all of that and the burden of trying to correct all of that is carried by my clients, which is insane to be charitable. In the last 12 months alone, the Innocence Project has successfully worked to exonerate at least 10 people from false convictions, the majority of them Black men, according to Sworns. And the project is working on many others. But despite the fever of celebrating these people's freedom, the trauma they're left with, she said, stays forever. Exoneration undermines the level of trauma that's hard to capture and convey, she said. When my clients come home, they face real post-traumatic stress from this experience. They're labeled with this badge of a felony and conviction of a murder and a rapist from something they completely did not do. Sworn said that in 2017, she successfully defended a client who was sentenced to death in Texas in a case that made it all the way to the Supreme Court. In this case, psychologists, experts, witness said Buck was prone to violence because he was Black, which received no objections in this Texas courtroom. People were prepared to have him executed. He lost everything. Before the United States Supreme Court said, in his Chief Justice Roberts, in his opinion, granting relief to Buck, wrote that the law punishes people for what they do and not who they are. Dispensing punishment on the basis of immutable characteristic dispensing punishment on the basis of immutable characteristics. For Sworns, the case was perceived between race and criminality is so hardwired in this country. This is a real perception that's hard to unmourn from the legal system. Just last month, Oklahoma began a blitz of 25 executions over 29 months, a figure many experts are calling horrifying, mainly because of the high likelihood that one or more of those inmates are innocent. In 2016, co-authored a study in Proceeding of the National Academy of Science, a peer-reviewed scientific journal, that was found that at least 4.1% of all death row inmates are innocent. 4.1% of death row inmates are innocent. Now, one person is way too many, but 4.1% of death row inmates are innocent, And that's only what's found. It's so many more inmates that's innocent that hadn't been able to figure out how to prove their innocence from inside. And yet they are executed from rape, murders, and drug crimes. Racism is a real big problem in this country. Racism is a real big problem in our communities. Internalized racism is a real big issue as well. False convictions is a problem, that Black people tend to suffer for way more than anybody else because we are labeled as monsters. We need some change. Black people and people with criminal records need to be a protected class citizen. We have so much that we have to set right. We have so many barriers that we need to break. And we need to dismantle racism at all costs, but we will not be able to do it until people that's unimpacted step forward in the fight of dismantling racism. We will not be able to dismantle racism until white people acknowledge some of the issues and problems that they probably were born into, that they carry. And we need white people on the front line to help dismantle racism within these institutions that everybody interact with on a daily basis. Let's stop sentencing innocent people